Good afternoon. I just asked Matt is in my office. I don't know if the commissioner and Chris and Jeff are all together. You want to bring up your screens? Jeff, you there? Commissioner B. Miller and Chris Pycraft, good to see you all. We're going to begin a video. I just wanted to do a very brief intro. First of all, welcome everybody back to this 1:30 panel, which I found so fascinating. When I got this call from Jeff Godke about what had been presented to the folks in Knox County, I said, you know what, this should be a session at our land bank conference. So I appreciate your willingness to allow us to use you as a case study. I'm going to ask our friends at Rock the House to begin the video. I visited Knox County with Jack Brancatelli, so please roll it. Rock the House.
So I'm here this morning with Jeff Godke, who is the president of the Knox County Area Development Foundation. And in that role, you also serve as president of the Knox County Land Bank.
That's right.
This is a fascinating building. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So we're sitting in the former B&O Railroad Depot built in 1900. The story goes that the B&O sent an architect up here to build two depots, one in Mount Vernon and one in Sandusky. Sandusky was a bigger town, so they were going to build the nicer, more ornate depot up there and get a more nondescript one down here. The story goes that the architect got up to Mount Vernon, got off the train and met a girl and decided to stay for 6 months and build the nicer depot here, and the less nice one up in Sandusky.
Well, it certainly is nice. When did they leave here, and what happened? What's the history of this land property?
This stopped serving as a passenger depot in the 1960s and then served as some railroad offices and was abandoned for quite some time. And then in 2008, through a public-private partnership with the city of Mount Vernon, it was acquired and refurbished, and the Area Development Foundation moved in last year.
We're here today to look at it's based on, we can see it's the largest transaction any land bank in the state is involved with. Wow. So you have the biggest transaction we're going to be focusing on, 47 acres, 25 buildings. Mm-hmm. How did this relationship come about?
So that particular property has been vacant for about 3 years. We have made numerous attempts to lease the buildings, but for whatever reason, we haven't had much success.
You say you, have they asked you, the land bank, to be involved in this?
No, so when I say we, I mean Area Development Foundation as the economic development group for the county. So it's right out our back window. I can see it through my office.
Sure,
it's been it's been our #1 economic development priority for 3 years, but no movement has happened. Recently, last October, some representatives from the company came and said, you know, we don't really want this anymore. We feel like it's best to be in local control, and we were very glad that they're being community-minded. They understand what that property means to the community and the potential that it has, not only to be repurposed, but the potential it has if it falls into disrepair and vacancy. So we're very grateful that they were so community-minded, and they said, you know, we'd like to turn this over to someone locally. So.
And have they kept people on site who have maintained the buildings? I mean, maintaining that many buildings cannot be, that's not an inexpensive proposition.
Right. There are currently an on-site maintenance team that maintains all of the systems in the building. So everything works. It's not pretty over there, but it needs a little lipstick, but everything works and it's move-in ready. So
you're going to get a piece of property where the buildings are maintained, mm-hmm. Taxes are current, but it's not without some hair.
Correct.
There is some hair on the deal, so
Correct.
To speak. Okay. What will happen in terms of the development of these? How will your ownership change the picture from what it is currently to what you hope it will be in the future? How do you think the land bank can be more nimble, more agile, and more creative in trying to repurpose those buildings?
Sure. So what our property management and repurposing scheme is, the land bank will hold title to the property, but we're going to create a separate supporting organization to be the on-site property managers and redevelopers. That group will be made up of some facility experts, some finance experts, some local business people, and it's going to be their job to create a vision and a pathway to repurpose that property. Of course, the land bank will have the final say on buyers or lessees or something like that.
Do you have any opinion on that? Would you sell a parcel would you subdivide it and sell them off individually? Do you want to be the landlord? What's your feeling about that?
So the land bank doesn't want to be a landlord. There may be some cases.
Smart, by the way. That's very smart.
There may be some cases where we have to do some leases, and we're not sure if Area Development Foundation may take the lease to a particular building and sublease to a company so that the land bank doesn't have to be a landlord. I guess we're having this conversation with so many questions that we haven't been able to answer yet.
Which hopefully we'll do as part of a discussion we're going to have today. We hope we can reach out to people in this audience and they can offer some suggestions.
I'd love to hear it. As I see it, we have two options. One is parcel up all 47 acres and sell them individually, or keep it together as one and do some kind of industrial park HOA type situation. The way that the utilities are all connected and things, that seems like it's a more reasonable approach, but we haven't quite figured that out, and I'm certainly willing to hear what everybody has to say.
Of the 25 buildings, how many, what's the square footage on all of it? Do you have a number? It's got to be hundreds of thousands of feet.
Almost 700,000.
And how much of that is office space where you could bring in an office user?
About 90,000.
9,000. So of the remaining, let's say 600,000 feet, if it was used for a specific purpose and constructed that way, will it prevent it from being used quickly for something else?
No. There are 4 major industrial facilities over there, and they can accommodate pretty much anything anybody's looking for. I mean, there's 100 cranes over there.
Wow.
On site. One of the buildings is 82 feet in ceiling height.
100 working cranes?
Yes.
Well, there you go. There's a selling point.
Right.
But by the way, speaking of selling points, any interest so far in any of the buildings?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Do you hope to have those people in sometime in 2020 or even sooner?
There's one company that's waiting for the land bank to have the lease so they can sign a lease. They've been waiting since March. So we're hoping to move somebody in quickly. And that'll help offset our costs too.
Sure.
As well.
Warehousing space, I mentioned there's plenty of warehouse space over there.
There's about 30,000 square feet of dedicated warehouse space, but there's also some smaller buildings kind of spread out that could work for that as well.
Plenty of opportunities.
Lots.
Yeah, well, this is exciting, and we look forward to touring the site with you. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to add?
No, I think you said it. This is opportunity, and this facility lends itself well to the makeup of the county. Our history is a manufacturing county. We make things here, and we've got some facilities now that are available to help meet the demand for the local workforce to continue that.
All right, so I'm with Doug Scholl, who is with the Ohio Equities Group, and you were working for the land bank and helping to market these amazing properties when they take possession next month.
Exactly right, yes.
Where are we now?
We are standing inside the main production facility, which includes with a total of 117,000 square feet. Previous corporation manufactured jet turbines in here. The unique features about this particular property is it's I would call oversupply of cranes that range anywhere from 2-ton capacity up to 50 tons. Several of them includes a welding shop, its own internal blast booth, and also its own internal paint booth. Plenty of clear height, truly a unique property from the standpoint of the features that I just mentioned in comparison to what you might find definitely here in Central Ohio and maybe several parts of the state as well.
So I learned today, Doug, this initially was the Cooper's company, and Cooper sold to Rolls-Royce.
Yes.
And Rolls-Royce sold to the company, we're not allowed to mention their name here today, the multinational corporation.
Exactly.
And at one time, you're producing more turbine engines here than anywhere in the country, I understand.
From the standpoint of engines, I think at one time it was diesel engines.
Diesel engines.
But then when Cooper's, or excuse me, rather when Rolls-Royce got involved,
Yeah.
then they went more to the jet turbines, which this international company then absorbed that entire business, and that's how they came to be in possession of this plant.
So it's your job to go out there, and they're out there. The question is finding them, to find what company might be interested in a space like this, with cranes like this, in this capacity, and that's what you're going to be doing. How do you do that as a realtor?
Well, by targeted marketing and a lot of research. At Ohio Equities, we're, I wouldn't say uniquely involved in research, but we do spend a lot of money and a lot of time on targeting companies through the research that we're equipped to make. And what my job will be is to focus that effort as much on the manufacturing industry as possible. We're developing lists right now that will enable us to target manufacturers not only in the state, but also regionally, nationally, and now internationally.
Will you be working with Jobs Ohio and other state agencies?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. They've been a big help to us from the standpoint of feeding us possible prospects for this property, whether it be this property or the several others that are on this campus. They have in the past produced prospects from in-state as well as out-of-state, and in a couple of instances came from Europe as well. So we know there's a market out there for companies that want to make things. I think you'll find with this campus, it wasn't built and designed for distribution. It's built with a primary focus on companies that want to come here to manufacture.
Having said that, if somebody steps forward and says, look, we'd like to use some of this for something other than manufacturing, for example, warehousing, you could do that, I imagine.
Absolutely, yes. We have a couple of buildings here that are more designed to provide the facilities that you need to do things like that, because those particular buildings I'm thinking of have loading docks plus drive-in doors, which for distribution type of use is much more amenable to things like that, because you've got a high volume of turnover and inventory inbound as well as outbound.
And you have office space, about 80, 90,000 feet here of office building.
Yes, right.
And do you think that will be an ancillary use to a user of this, or could it be an independent, separate users, combination of?
Well, we kind of both, really. Yeah. But we fully intend to segment the office portion of the campus and go after users that really have no need to make things. They have a need to be in Central Ohio, and more specifically maybe in Knox County. But we have buildings here that could accommodate users from the standpoint of space as small as maybe 10,000 square feet up to 60,000 square feet. The thing we'll find as we go through the campus is it's unique in the fact that it's not one building of 670,000 square feet. It's a variety of buildings, between 20 and 25 different freestanding buildings in various sizes, which allows us now to accommodate various users. We're not targeting one single user as has been the past in the history of this campus.
And what'll be nice for this community is if you've got 15, 20 independent companies operating here, one of those companies should go out, the others are still there, as opposed to the situation you had here before where the single user said, I'm gone, mm-hmm. and you have all this empty space.
That's we feel one of the great advantages to this campus, because now we can target more specifically uses that we solicit, right, versus buildings on campus that could fill that particular need. Right. Each building has its own unique features. There's nothing common about any of them in comparison to the balance of them. And I think that what we find is that once we get rolling with the marketing program, which will happen very, very soon, we think that we'll be able to, once again, target what we have and let the market, not only locally, but also to the world, know what we have in Mount Vernon, Ohio.
Great. Come back next year and see the progress.
Please come back, and I think you'll see the results of what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks to Jack Brancatelli. That was a great video, I thought. By the way, to the panelists, he's a student at Cleveland State, not even a film student. somebody in the urban school, and he's very interested in urban work, and he came along, and I want to thank him for his great work. Commissioner, I'm going to ask you to unmute your speaker there, and I welcome you. It's good to see you, and I want to thank your leadership. I know you're one of the people critical in getting a land bank off the ground in Knox County.
Yes, I was excited to do that.
You've been involved in Knox County for a long time. I won't say what year you started at the clerk's office, but it's more than a few.
Yes, it has
been.
been.
The same year I entered Cleveland City Council. So it's good to see your involvement. And I guess my first question is, an empty complex like this, I'm sure it's not something you want to see as a commissioner in Knox County, obviously.
Yes.
What do you think? So it's been sitting empty for several years. So what do you think that you and the land bank can do that maybe the company that we're not allowed to mention the name, what do you think you can do that they weren't doing? Do you think they were really attuned to what was going on here? Or what is your sense of what happened with them?
No, I mean, I think the fact that they are, not located here, I think they chose to leave the campus. And I don't think they're probably tuned in to what Knox County really needs and what we'd like to see. And I think that obviously we don't want to see this as an empty campus, but it's large. There are a lot of buildings, but I think that we are in a better position here in Knox County to determine what will work at that particular site. And so, thankfully, they seem to understand that too at this point, because I think that's why they're willing to let someone else take the lease.
I just got an immediate question here. Where is the city of Mount Vernon as well? Do you work closely with them? Where are they in terms of their involvement with the project?
Well, obviously, with ADF, Area Development Foundation, being a partner, the city is a partner in that. This campus is in our county seat of Mount Vernon. So I think they are motivated to also see something happen here that's going to be positive because, truthfully, they lost a lot of income tax when this company left. And I think that, obviously they want to get that back. So I think that they will, as this goes along, they will become more involved.
In its heyday, Commissioner, were the buildings all occupied? Was that pretty much a full place?
Yes. I mean, it's always been occupied by one company going back, I think it was like 1833. Jeff will probably correct me on that. But going back to that point, it's been continuously operated by one company. So, I think we know here in Knox County that is very unlikely to happen again. That just isn't what is happening, to occupy that big of a campus. So I think that's why it lends itself to a multi-use situation.
You always run the risk, you have a single company that when they leave town.
Absolutely. And I don't think we want to see that again.
So do you ideally see this as sort of maybe a kind of an industrial, kind of a manufacturing park, an incubator with 20 or 30 companies?
Well, I think we're open. Obviously, manufacturing is, a big part of what we do here in Knox County. So that is obviously a main push. But I think we see opportunities for social service agencies. We've got some interest that we hope is coming from that particular sector, maybe a hub of some sort that would make it more accessible for our citizens. So I think, and Jeff will certainly comment on this, that we see this as a multi-use campus at this point. And I think we are open. If it meets the needs and meets what we think we want to see here in Knox County, then I'm certain that we'll be open to looking at that.
Thanks, and we'll have some more. We have questions coming in, Commissioner. Okay. So I thought I might go to Chris, the attorney on the deal. Chris, I see you went to law school up here at Case Western. Came back home. So my question to you, Chris, is first of all, is this done yet? I don't even know. Is the deal been finalized? Are we close?
Almost. So as is the case with all deals, it's not done till it's done, but we've exchanged final documents, have a ceremonial signing next week, and expect to be in escrow and ready to go here within the next 7 days.
So if I understand correctly, this is not going to be a fee simple transfer. This is part of a long-term lease, correct?
Correct.
And what were some of the challenges? I don't want you to get too deep into the legal weeds because we didn't offer any CLE credits for this one. We did for some of the others. If you get into this, I'd make sure we call the Ohio Supreme Court and add some. But what were some of the challenges you faced? This is a huge, complex, very complicated deal. Can you give us a little background?
Sure. I think the first challenge was it's an unusual transaction for a land bank. In your introduction, you talked about this being one of the largest active transactions that we're aware of in the state of Ohio. It was with a large organization. That presents its own challenges, getting the right people in the room who can authorize decisions. From a legal standpoint, the structural challenges were finding a way to make sure the land bank had the comfort and the power and the personnel involved so that they had a transaction they could approve and be an active participant in, but also find a way to not step outside their comfort zone. Jeff mentioned in the video how unusual it is for a land bank to be a long-term landlord. That's not the plan here. Part of the challenge that remains is that the plans are still developing. So when you have an opportunity like this, you jump on it and you work on the structure along the way. And I think one of the most successful parts about the structural challenges that we faced is that it resulted in the collaboration of lots of different folks. We've already had a question about the city's participation. Obviously, we have the county and the land bank on board. ADF is the economic development engine, and Jeff in the video mentioned a supporting organization. One of the structures that we're trying to replicate is commonly used by government and quasi-government entities who operate port authorities, airport authorities, or other similar structures, where you have a government entity or a quasi-government entity that's the fee simple owner of the dirt, and you lease the buildings under long-term leases that are freely assignable. And the people who have space there may act and be perceived by the public as owning, a fee simple interest in a portion of the facility, but they don't. They're actually long-term tenants. And you end up with a kind of a large development partnership of sorts, which is a pretty common structure, but not typical for land banks. And I think that was a hard place to land because it's not something that's cookie cutter and it's not something lots of other people have done.
What about environmental issues? I'm assuming that if I'm this large multinational and I'm transferring all these properties to whatever the entity, in this case, it's the land bank, do you have any sense of what the environmental issues were? Did they offer you any immunity? Or, of course, land banks have some immunity from liability on an environmental side, but what are the challenges there?
I'm sorry, my audio cut out just a little bit. I heard
what are the challenges
the environmental.
On the environmental side, Jeff, what were the challenges? Do you sense that, I know what it was, there was a lot of testing going on here, diesel, jet engines. What's your sense of phase ones, phase twos? Was that part of the process here?
It's always part of the process, and every time a land bank is involved in a transaction, you have either the expectation of environmental issues or you have the expectation that you're not going to be able to find out everything you'd like to know about the property. Land banks have certain special statutory protections that allow them to do things that maybe governments and private parties don't like to do. And so part of the strategy of using a land bank is to take advantage of those rules so that we can still find a way to do a deal with a party on the other side who's a private party who has to be sensitive to those types of concerns. And so we had to walk a very fine line that we're probably still walking today that includes what we can and can't say about what we actually did and what we know, and that has some things that will continue to be things we'd like to know more about that we don't as we sit here today. The transaction's not all the way complete. And so there are some things we hope to still find out. There's some things we don't think we'll know before the transaction's done. And part of the strategy of dealing with issues like that is being able to establish some clear lines about what you can say and being able to understand how you can go forward with tenants or ideally in the long term fee simple purchasers of portions of the property. And as Jeff said, we're still trying to figure out exactly the best strategy from here going forward. And to date, the most important thing has been trying to work with all the parties who are involved to address environmental, confidentiality, business, maintenance, and other issues so that we can get the property under local control. And once that happens, we can address some of those things that we've been unable to address so far. It's part of the risk of the deal, but under the circumstances, we think we structured it in a way that provides appropriate protections for all the parties.
Well, and there are obviously some great opportunities you don't want to pass up here. So I'm going to come to Jeff. I'm going to tell Jeff's story. We talked about how land banks have changed the playing field for so many communities. Well, land banks changed Jeff Gotke's life. He was teaching history at the local high school, and his bio says that he was so interested in the work of land banks that he left teaching and came to the land banks. So you left up the comfort of the state teacher retirement system, and you're here now. I'm looking out your window. That's not the complex behind you, is it? I can't tell, Jeff, or is it?
It is right out this window,
Right there.
Yep.
So it reminds you of your decision every day.
That's right. And when people ask me if I miss teaching for this job, I immediately say no. I've never had a second thought.
Well, so Jeff, we talked about some of this, but let's repeat it. So there are two people that are over there that were working full-time, employees of the multinational corporation, correct?
Correct.
And their job is to keep all the mechanical systems working. They go from building to building, I imagine.
Right. So
they check the cranes, they check mechanical systems. Those guys will soon be on your payroll.
correct. Right.
And Commissioner B. Miller's payroll. You'll be on the payroll. They're moving from one to the other. Maybe you give them a better deal. I don't know, but they're critical. They come with the property, right?
Right. And both of them have worked there, I think, for a combined 40 years. So they know that property top to bottom, and they were crucial to this deal to provide some continuity of knowledge over there.
Does that mean they even work on the cranes to make sure they're working?
They contract out for the cranes, but they handle all the other systems.
So I'm sure you've done the estimates. What do you expect the costs potentially could be to not only employ them, but to keep the lights on, so to speak? Are we talking, I'm not going to ask you to give me specifics unless you want to, but I'm sure it's a multi-$100,000 number.
It's in the high six figures, yes.
Okay. And we can check with Commissioner Miller as well. But so there are costs involved, but obviously you're undertaking this because of all the opportunities provided. But if I'm not mistaken, this company forgot that they had some other assets besides this this complex. Is that right?
Right. There was a guest house that's on the other side of town that when we asked them about, hey, when this transfers, does the guest house come with it? And their response was, what guest house?
And I understand it's a nice guest house too.
It's beautiful, right? Soon to be for sale.
Well, there's some. Now, I'm assuming that's not part of a lease, and I'm assuming I'll ask that to Chris, right? Chris, it's not part of the lease, so you can sell that, and I imagine that'll give you some operating capital, right?
That's exactly the strategy. And to answer your direct question, I'm a lawyer, and I'm going to say it's complicated and it depends.
Yeah. Okay. So, Jeff, that house goes for sale pretty soon, I'm guessing, huh?
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's complicated, and it.
Let us know. We'll put the listing up on the Ohio Land Bank Association website.
Great.
So the house sells. You're underway now. Can you give me an idea in its heyday? How many people are working at this site? 1,000, 1,200, 1,500? Do you know a number?
About 2,000.
Wow, a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
What's the income tax rate in the city of Mount Vernon?
2%.
2%. So the city took a big hit when the multinational closed its doors.
They did. That's just an income tax. There's also utility fees, and then of course sales tax as well, which goes to the county. So it was a multi-million-dollar hit that the whole community took when that company left.
Can you give me a sense of property taxes? That's what I used to do. I used to collect property taxes in my other life. When I was a history teacher, my history teacher job was property taxes. Then I fell in love with land banks too. So my question to you is, what was the property tax? What were they paying? I mean, because of course the multinational was paying up through now. What were they paying?
About $160,000 a year.
And so that will stop, right? So the property taxes, the land bank takes control. I don't expect you're going to be paying property taxes. That's one of the advantages you have.
Right.
So I hope I'm not getting too probing, but there's an end to this point. So, and maybe Chris weighs in. So as you begin to parcel, let's assume for a second, you said you've got somebody on the line. Let's assume in the next year, because of the great opportunities it provides, you end up with, I'll pick a number, 10 tenants. Has anybody figured out yet how that's going to affect certainly they're going to be paying income tax and there'll be sales tax. Will you remain in a non-property tax collecting position for a while? How do you thought that far ahead, Jeff?
Yes and no. The idea is as the property gets leased up or sold, then those companies would assume their fair share of paying the taxes. So while there's maybe a short-term hit to the county or to the city, that's just an incentive on my part to try to fill this place up so they can realize those gains again, and then some, hopefully.
Do you know what the number was on the other position, sales tax? So what did the county lose when they shut their doors? Do you know?
Teresa, do you know the answer to that?
No, I mean, truthfully, the income tax was the bigger hit. We do know that some of the people that were employed did not live in Mount Vernon. So, we did not see a great loss of sales tax due to it. Obviously, there's some, but, at the end, they had really reduced the number of employees. And like I said, many of those, their engineers were not living here in Knox County. So I would say, income tax certainly was a bigger hit as they, came down from that 2000 number to much, much lower.
I have a question here, Commissioner, maybe to you. They've asked if you've reached out to any governmental offices as possibly transferring their offices from other less desirable locations to this one. So you've got 90,000 feet of office there. Is there a chance somebody might move over from the county or the city or the state?
Well, we are certainly hoping. Jeff has been working on that. He's had conversations with the city. The county at this point has purchased some different properties. One thing we are looking at, our transit system is under the commissioners, and we do need a new location for them with more space. So we would like to find a site on that campus that could work for them. So that would be one county office. And I know Jeff has been in talks with the city about some different things. So I do think that that's a possibility, a definite possibility for the county with our transit system.
I received another question. This is maybe to you, Commissioner, and to Jeff. What advice can you give other land banks that might be hesitant to partner on projects like this one, where there is some level of uncertainty? We have a possibility of accepting a large piece of property from a company, but we are reluctant to do so at this point. I'd love to hear your recommendations, Commissioner.
Well, as I would say, if you're looking at doing this, what really helped was the land bank knew Area Development Foundation already manages the land bank for us. And so Area Development is a very big partner with the land bank on this project. And then we also know that we have some buy-in from some community foundations. So I think one of the things you have to know, because the land bank really looked at how much it was going to cost to maintain this property and all the things that go along with that. If you don't have good partners, then I could see you would, yes, this would be probably something that would seem daunting, but we really have good partnerships going into this. And I think that's why we believe that it will be successful. So I would say that's one of the key things, to know that you have partners and people who really want to get behind this.
Another question here. Somebody asked, is the Area Development Foundation a private philanthropic organization? And then the question mark, is it part of government? Can you explain what the Area Development Foundation is and its relationship to both the county and then to the land bank?
Right. So ADF was formed in the 1950s primarily to develop the Mount Vernon Industrial Park. It's a private 501c6 nonprofit, but over time it has assumed all of the economic development functions that a CIC or a port authority or something like that, any run-of-the-mill Department of Development would. So we contract with all of the municipal governments in the county to do their economic development work for them. In 2017, we created the land bank under the commissioners, of course, but the commissioners contract with ADF to run the land bank.
So I have another question here. It says, we know it's early in the process, but do you contemplate tax abatement will be used on a property such as this? Then they have TIFs question mark. And I assume you're looking at all the tools. Have you given that some consideration at this point? The
It is, and
commissioner,
this is one of the benefits of having the land bank and the economic development group together. So this property is in a TIF district. I fully intend to roll out all of the incentive programs for the right deal.
Commissioner, you want to add to that, or?
No, I would agree. I mean, if it's right for what we're doing, I think that the commissioners would be in favor of looking at, tax abatements and those types of things.
Now, Governor Dewine, we were fortunate enough to have him on a call yesterday. He joined the panel at 12:15. We had him for about 15 minutes. That begs the question for me. Jobs Ohio, they've got a few bucks over there, as you know, just a few. And there's been some criticism saying that they have too much money. They're not moving enough of it out of there. And I don't know if you've heard that, Commissioner, but I guess my question to you is, how do you see them interfacing with you on this project, and to Jeff as well?
Well, and when you talked about why would you hesitate to go into this deal, I think you'll obviously want to know what kind of funding might be out there that can help you with remediation or certain things like that. And Jeff has been in contact, and he can talk about this with Jobs Ohio, and he's really, I think, got a handle on some of the grant money that is out there that we can use. So Jeff, you probably want to comment on what you've done already.
At 3:30, I have a call with Jobs Ohio, and we're going to talk all about grant funding for this particular project. But to answer an earlier question, I never really had any hesitation on this deal. Maybe that's because I don't know what I'm doing because I'm so new to the field. But I mean, where this property is in the middle of the city, and the harm that could come to the city and the county if the property were abandoned and left to disrepair, the land bank taking control of it was a no-brainer. The answer was always yes. The question was just like, how bad is it going to be for us to do it? So when we've been talking about the partnerships, that's really been the key, is get everybody at the table, and you'll know what questions, you'll know what the answers are to the questions.
I had a comment here from somebody in Warren, Ohio, talking about the fact that their biggest problem right now in Warren, and I realize Warren and Mount Vernon are two different places, they've got a hospital that's been closed. They've been unable to repurpose it, and it's become a major sore point in the community. I don't know that Mount Vernon sees the kind of issues that perhaps some of the communities do up Northeast, but I guess their point is deal with your problems before they become bigger problems. So, Commissioner, let me ask you this. In terms of, I'm going to ask you a land bank question. You're a member of the land bank board.
Yes, I'm chair.
Have you found in the work you're doing with the land bank, it's not just Mount Vernon. Have you been working with villages and townships throughout Knox County and what the land bank might do for them?
Yes, we have. I think that was one of the big things that we wanted to make sure that we didn't just concentrate on Mount Vernon. We wanted to make sure that we were reaching out to the townships, the villages. And I will say that Jeff knew that was something that was important to us, and he has worked on that, and we have done things out in the county. We've done some things where we were able to get some property and turn it over to our park district. So yes, it definitely is a countywide effort. And I do want to say that Jeff and ADF, they've done a great job of knowing that we want to get out there. He's been talking with the villages, and he can kind of, go into a little more detail, but yes, definitely it's a countywide venture, and that's what we want to see. We want to make sure that we're helping them as much as we are the city of Mount Vernon.
And I noticed, Commissioner, and Jeff and I talked about this, unlike a lot of counties whose major focus early on is blight removal, you're fortunate. You don't have the same kind of blight that we see in counties throughout the state. Is that fair to say?
That's true. We don't see those large numbers of homes that are, completely dilapidated. I think what we've seen is homes in particular neighborhoods that need assistance and need help. And if you get those to where they look much nicer, it helps the rest of the community. In fact, we'll talk about one that Jeff might want to bring up, a home that we thought was going to be a demo, which has been redone, and we toured it. It was looking great. And so the city now has the owner next to it working on their house, which really kind of made the other one look, you know, much worse. Working on it to get the outside, they're getting siding. So I think what we see is when we do those kinds of things, I think it makes the whole neighborhood start to look at what they want to do. And we're doing some actual neighborhood efforts, which Jeff can comment on, targeting neighborhoods and seeing what the residents want to see happen in their neighborhood. So yes, you're correct, but you know, you always have those different properties that can certainly help once you get those taken care of.
I have to chuckle. I got a comment here, Commissioner, you'll enjoy. It says, you've got a lot of smart kids in Kenyon College. Are you involving them in this project? I don't think Kenyon kids are involved with this, but maybe they're involved with the land bank. And Jeff, I don't know.
Jeff can speak to that actually, because they've been doing some work for us.
Jeff, you have any of that? Somebody said you got a lot of smart kids at Kenyon. Are you involving them?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we hire an intern from Kenyon College every semester, and we've tasked them with creating some redevelopment schemes for the 4 different corridor entries into the city of Mount Vernon, and they have done just remarkable, excellent work that we're going to be able to use and create programs and some real neighborhood revitalization because of it. There's another partnership that other people listening in should consider as their local colleges.
I have a comment here from John Ryan, who's the statewide director for Senator Sherrod Brown. He said he's really enjoying the presentation. Thanks, John, for the comment, and I'll make sure they call you after this panel to see what kind of money you can dig up in Washington. I'm assuming have you reached out to the 2 senators? We had hoped Senator Portman would be on at about 12:30. He could not make it today, but we had Senator Brown and Governor Dewine yesterday. Have you reached out yet to the Senate and congressional offices? I'm sure you have.
We have, yep. We've talked to representatives from all of our local elected officials.
Any ideas what kind of assistance they can provide besides maybe some EDA money? I imagine if you do need, and Chris, I know we can't talk about it, but if you do need some cleanup dollars, there might be some money there, right?
Where the gaps seem to be is in funding for carrying costs. I mean, there's money for environmental cleanup or for building rehab and things like that, but it's the carrying cost that we're lucky to have a local philanthropic partner that can help us with some of that stuff. But that seems to be the toughest funding nut to crack.
I'm looking for more questions from the audience or ideas. I put the call out, hey, help me to solve this problem. And it's been strangely quiet. I think this is a tough one. I mean, I've often heard that speech made where somebody will show the Chinese character, I think the word is Wei Ji, and it's the same character for both danger and opportunity. Have you ever heard that? You could Google that, and I think you'll find there is danger here, but there's also opportunity. And I think you see that. You can't afford to let something like this continue to deteriorate any further. And I think that was your decision, Commissioner, right? You just had to kind of.
And one of the things I might bring up that Chris could then comment on, I think one of the tough things for the land bank, and perhaps for me especially, was as we looked at the structure under the land bank, we obviously looked at whether we would have a supporting group that was a committee of the land bank, or whether there would be a supporting organization set up. And that was a discussion that we kind of took some time on. And I think Chris can talk about this because we finally, we relied on his advice on this, but that was one of the things that, we were looking at, which is the better option and why. So Chris, maybe you want to comment.
I'd be happy to. I referenced earlier common Port Authority and Airport Authority structures as kind of model, using their model as a way to apply that here. But the business purpose of that idea is to have a group that is entirely focused on this project. It's a big project. As you just pointed out, there's a lot of opportunity. There's some danger too. And rather than have the land bank be distracted from its core function, we created a separate legal entity to be responsible for a lot of the carrying aspects of the project. And that frees the land bank up to continue to do the types of other projects that we've already heard about today. whether it's working on an individual residential house or focusing on a different area in Knox County, the land bank is not distracted or overwhelmed by one project that's unusual, and it was allowed to effectively partner. And part of the structure and the use of a supporting organization is specifically because of its not-for-profit status, which makes raising funds and doing other kinds of activities that relate to how to solve the problem of carrying costs a little more easy to solve, as opposed to having ADF or a for-profit entity or some other partnership have to be the responsible party. So we think we've landed on a structure that gives us the maximum flexibility to receive funds as donations, to fundraise through activities, and to hopefully start generating some revenue from the use and the occupancy of the facility. That flexibility is inherent in the structure because we're still figuring out some of the key details, and that flexibility is important to us to work together as a group so that everything can fit together for the betterment of the project and for the community as a whole.
Thank you. And I've got more questions. These are from other land bank directors. A land bank director in Mahoning County said, is the property owner demanding any non-compete clauses, or is there anything else that they've asked for that might limit your marketing efforts? I don't know if that's for you, Chris or Jeff, who can respond. Any non-competes? Anything they're asking you to do that might limit your ability to market?
No, so that's a common problem when you have a large facility that somebody may be considering donating as an exit strategy for it. As is often the case with exit strategies, though, if the occupant or the prior owner is exiting because they're leaving the area, it's often easy to avoid non-competition type restrictions because their departure often signals that they no longer have an interest in protecting their market share locally. They're leaving in the first place. We don't expect that to be an issue in our project, and I think in a lot of cases that would be like this, it should be something that you could hopefully avoid in your other transactions.
Next question also came from a land bank director in Montgomery County. Are all of the utilities interconnected, making it difficult to subdivide the property and limiting your disposition options, or requiring investment to sever the interconnections?
Yes, and since I'm the one, I see Jeff nodding, but since I'm the one that's already unmuted,
Well,
that's
Jeff,
one of the key.
you know, Jeff, it's simple. You just push the button and you can talk.
I'm sure he won't be shy. But one of the key challenges about, I mean, you saw how big and how unique some of the buildings are in the video. And once you see them and you see the cranes and the space, and you think about, oh my gosh, I have to heat this, I have to cool this, I have to make sure that the pipes don't burst. Some of the facilities are large, some of them are more modest in size. Subdividing the buildings individually into multi-tenant structures and breaking out the utilities could be one of the chief tasks and one of the most expensive things that the group does as part of developing the property. And that's an example of something we hope to be able to find funding for because it's an active project and it's not just related to carrying, but it is going to be a challenge. Because this property has always been a one entity owned and operated facility, there was no need to subdivide previously. And so there are shockingly few utility meters, and it is combined and jumbled together across most of the campus.
Jeff, do you want to weigh in on that to Chris's answer?
Not really. I think he said it. There's two gas companies involved. There's a railroad. There's of course the electric company, but it's not all just one line into the campus. Yeah, that's why I mentioned in the video.
Wait, a railroad, functional rail line?
Oh yeah, with its own spur.
Well, there's a selling point.
It's nothing but upside here in Knox County.
They're knocking at the door. I think I see them behind you right now. Open the door, Jeff. So let's talk about those cranes. I know we talked to Mr. Scholl. There are some 100-ton cranes there. I mean, in their marketing, have they begun to get a sense of who uses 100-ton cranes? A lot of people.
Right. I wish Doug was here to answer that question, but he's got a great sense of what's there, but also what the demand is. So, I'm optimistic that at least those 4 large industrial buildings that we'll be able to fill those up pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, what a great opportunity. I'm going to tell you something. I'm waiting for more Q&A or more answers from the land banks. I know we've got about 120 people participating right now. But if I don't get another question or a comment, I may actually cut this a little short, but.
You know, while we're waiting for questions, if I could
No, for answers. You're waiting for answers.
That's right. If I could just mention too that you know, the company that's transferring the lease to us, they came up about this time last year and toured it and sort of realized, well, you know, this isn't for us anymore. And they sat down with ADF and they said, you know, do you guys want this? We feel like local control is the best option for this property. They didn't have to do that. They could have returned the lease back to the owner. They could have found a new someone else to take over the lease, but they didn't. And I don't want to paint them in too bad a light, because without them being willing to do that and understanding that local control is what's best for the community, we wouldn't be here. Now, they may have left us with who knows what down the road, but you know, without them, this opportunity wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Well, someday, Jeff, there'll be a history teacher in Knox County talking about a history teacher who helped take a land bank to new heights.
Well, here's hoping.
They'll be showing your picture. So, well, again, we're about 9 minutes short, but nobody else has given me any answers. So I want to thank our panelists. Commissioner, thank you for your leadership.
Well, thank you. I mean, like I said, it's a partnership, and that's what is important.
And Chris, it's nice to meet you, and I'm sure you'll have other challenging deals.
They're always fun, though.
Yeah, and Jeff, the fun has just begun. So
Yeah, like we say, the dog is about to catch the car.
right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.